Warning, this video may contain content that may not be suitable for children or anyone else that is easily offended. Strong language, graphic content, nudity, bad jokes, and a possible idiot, aka myself, may be featured in the following clip. Viewer discretion is advised. It is not responsible for any damages that you receive watching this video. What's up, y'all? It's Zems, and welcome to another reaction video. Today we're going to be reacting to Mrballen, Top 3 Impossible Places People Were Found, Part 18. Be sure you go stop by and go check out the last reaction video, man. If you're into the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the alternate place, because I'm going to direct you right down to the description box and go follow my boy Mrballen on his original page and watch the video in its entirety without me pausing and stopping through the whole thing. Next week, you guys do not want to miss it. I know Christmas time is coming up, and I have something I want to give back to you guys. It may not be big, but it is something to show my appreciation, so make sure you guys stay tuned with that, and I'm going to be uploading the video, so like I said, sometime next week, and explaining the rules and how you can go about winning something for free. Yes, I said free. So you should be excited. It's kind of like when you go out to eat and you get like a fast food or something, and then you're about to get ready to throw out the trash, and you look down at the bottom of the bag and you see like 4 extra fries, and that amount of happiness. You got to have that kind of happiness going for you. Also, I want to give a big shout out to multiple people. Big shout out to Sarah. Big shout out to Ubi Man, Josh Upperman, Amosa, Little Bunny Gamer, Cheryl Thornton, man, all you guys that be down there in the comment section that be showing support. If I didn't mention you, don't be offended, but just know I am paying attention to the comment section. I am paying attention to the amount of support you guys are giving me, and it's really appreciated.
Every year, hundreds of people go missing.
Facts.
In baffling conditions
At Fort Hood,
in the woods of North America. I'm talking about people that are right in front of someone, and then in an instant they're just gone and they're never found again.
like my dad.
Or in some cases they are found again, but they're in places that are impossible to access.
Facts.
One former police detective named David Politis has investigated thousands of these strange disappearances, and he documents what he finds in his incredible book series called Missing 411. Today, we're going to look at 3 of his strangest Missing 411 cases. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of
the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel, because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, 5 times every week.
So if that's of interest,
go!
Please give the like button, VIP access.
That don't hype you up, I don't know.
Roller coaster.
You're in the wrong
at
place.
Six Flags Great Adventure, New Jersey. And once the like button gets to the top of the ride, go ahead and manually turn off the ride and then close the park. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
What did the dog see? First of all, let me start off by saying, if your dog sees something, if your dog ear perks up at night, if your dog jumps off the bed and goes to the door and starts sniffing the door, it just looks like he's seen something, leave the house, call 911, because either 1, it's a ghost, 2, it's an intruder, or a natural disaster is coming. Your boy is a mind reader when it comes to pets. And if something happens to the dog, you're out of luck, because that's probably one of the first warning signs you're going to get if anything's about to happen.
May 21st, 1941, Betty Albright and her 3-year-old son, Eldridge, traveled to her mother's house in rural Woodstock, Maryland. Betty had asked her mother if she would look after her son for the afternoon so Betty could catch up on some much-needed sleep. They arrived at Betty's mother's house at about 1:30, and right away Betty went inside, handed her son to her mom, and went upstairs to take a nap. As for Eldridge and his grandmother, they went out in the backyard to play. Now, Eldridge loved going to his granny's house because she had this enormous backyard for him to play in. If you were standing on her back porch looking out, it would be 250 meters of just open grass for him to run around.
That's nice,
dude. And it butted up against this huge forest.
I wish.
And in the middle of her property, looking straight out at the forest, there was this 3-meter gap in the trees that if you walked through it, it would bring you down to this creek bed that was seasonal, and there was very rarely any water running through it. From the porch, anyone that was standing in this creek bed, you could clearly see. And so Eldridge was allowed to play in the creek bed, so long as he didn't go right or left in the creek, which would put him out of view. No, that's still too far. If that was, I don't know, because usually you'll say real photo, but if it looked anything like that photo, do not send your kids a mile away and to play in a creek, but because you know kids are going to get curious, and they're going to go somewhere, and they're going to get lost. They're going to get taken. They're going to get kidnapped. Pay attention to your kids, bro. Here, you're supposed to be here with when your kids are outside playing. If you tell your kid, go to the slides, and you see your kid went from the slide to the swings, it's a problem. Stay at the slide. Now he's got to wait 5 minutes before I can make up my mind if I can determine if he can go back to the slides or the swings, you know what I'm saying? I'm strict. And I'm not going to be that strict. I'm probably going to be a huge softie, to be honest. I don't know. Anybody on the porch. And so this particular day, when Eldridge and his grandmother went outside, Eldridge wanted to go play in the creek bed. So he immediately starts running across the yard towards it, along with his grandmother's 3 dogs. As for his grandmother, she just didn't have it in her to go all the way down to the creek bed, so she decided she would just sit on the porch and read a book and keep her eye on Eldridge.
Yeah, the
She
grandma
remembers
too.
watching her
She's
grandson
old.
go all the way across the yard,
Aw.
get to the break in the trees, and then step down into the creek bed where he began goofing around with the dogs and throwing rocks and having a good time, clearly in view. And for the next 5-10 minutes, she just stared directly at her grandson and the dog.
There we go.
And at some point, she picked up the book next to her, and she began reading the book, and then periodically looking up to check on her grandson, and then back down to the book. At about 2 p.m., she was looking down at her book when she heard her grandson yell out for help. Now, 3-year-olds yell out for help all the time.
The worst thing about this is you have an older person watching this child. So no matter how fast she's moving, she's not moving fast enough because she's old. And by that time, you have knee problems, hip problems, back problems. She's not going to be moving that fast. But then again, she may have adrenaline. She may put on a Captain America, suit or something and get over there in time. But because that scream, bruh, I'd have been over there like Flash, bruh. And this old lady is not about to make it.
Sometimes it's a big deal, and sometimes it's not such a big deal. But oftentimes the sound of their voice gives away how serious it is. No matter what they say, it's like their tone gives away, should I take this seriously, or is this just a kid being a 3-year-old? And she would say that the way he was yelling sounded like a real emergency. When she poked her head up, even though she had seen him, less than a minute ago, playing in the gap in the trees, now she's looking and he and the dogs are gone. And so, of course, she hops out of her seat, she goes down the steps, and she starts walking across the yard towards Eldridge. And she's yelling his name, and she's
Hey, Carol.
When she got about halfway across the yard, she heard Eldridge yell out again. Except this time, his voice was coming from way off in the forest, way farther away from the last time he had yelled out. It gave the impression to her that he had moved a great distance from the last time he yelled to her.
If you're sitting on the porch reading a book and a kid yelling, the only thing you do is this, bruh, come on. I hope you get to the last page of that book and the ending is torn out. You don't even know what happened. You can't find it on Google. You can't find it at Barnes & Noble. You can't find it at the library. You just can't find it at all. You just have to be left wondering what happened. Look up when the kids scream. You must be ashamed of yourself. I hope he's still alive. What happened to the dogs, though? The dogs didn't do nothing.
It triggered something inside of her that was telling her something is terribly wrong. And she began running towards the creek.
There we go.
Still no sign of the dogs. She can't see anything. She's just running towards the creek bed. When she gets about 10 meters away from the break in the trees, she hears her grandson yell out for a 3rd time, barely audible, way off in the forest. He yells out for help.
He gone.
He's yelling. It sounds like someone has stifled him and covered his mouth mid-yell. So she runs through the break in the trees down to the creek bed where she stops, and she looks out in front of her, and it's just dense forest, and there's no Eldridge, there's no dogs, there's nothing. She looks to her right down the creek bed, and there's nothing down there, and then she looks to her left, and one of her dogs is in the creek bed, maybe 10 meters away, facing away from her, and the dog is positioned in such a way that it's clearly looking at something.
There we go.
And so she runs down to the dog, thinking she's going to see maybe Eldridge or the other dogs, but there's nothing beyond the dog. The dog is just rooted to the spot. Its hair is raised, it's growling, and it's taking little steps back, like it's been spooked at whatever it's seen or whatever it's looking at. And she just looked up.
That ain't no person, bruh. Ain't no person about to scare a dog in a place like that and have them backing up. Werewolf, El Cucuy, Chupacabra, or the Llorona. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I think.
And tried to look in the direction the dog was looking, but there was nothing. It was just forest. And so at this point, she felt certain that someone must have abducted Eldridge. And so she turns, she tries to pull the dog to come with her, but the dog's not budging. And so she runs back to the house to wake up Eldridge's mother. The two of them come back down to the creek bed. The dog is still in the same position, growling and staring in the same direction, as if whatever it's looking at hasn't gone anywhere.
Talk to the dog.
And they look for a couple more minutes. They're yelling for Eldridge. And the grandmother is telling her daughter, look, I think he's been abducted. We got to call the authorities. And finally, she relents. And so they do manage to get the dog. They run back to the house and they call the police. Shortly thereafter, the state police showed up with this huge contingent of searchers. And they immediately went down to the creek bed where they started pushing predominantly to the left side, which is where the dog was angled, and it was also where the grandmother had heard her grandson yelling from. And very quickly, police discover some of Eldridge's footprints about 50 meters down on the left side of the creek bed. They were in some sand right at the edge, and they were walking away as if he was leaving the area he had been told to stay in, which was in that gap in the trees. But interestingly, the footprints, it looked like he had been walking for maybe 20 or 30 meters, and then inexplicably, the prints just stopped, as if he stopped in the sand where he was. But had he gone right, left, straight, turned around, had he gone in any direction, there would have been additional prints in the sand.
So aliens.
Which gave the impression that was where someone must have lifted him up and kidnapped him. But they never found any prints connected.
That's what I'm saying.
For the rest of the day and that night, they would not find any more signs of Eldridge or the other two missing dogs. The next
Maybe it's a
day,
witch.
about 24 hours after Eldridge had gone missing, there were a number of search crews that had gone well outside of the primary search area in hopes of maybe finding one of the two lost dogs, because they thought maybe they could bring them to the lost child. And this one crew that was 4 miles away from where Eldridge had gone missing, they were walking past a swamp when one of them heard what sounded like a child whimpering. And it was coming from inside the swamp. And so immediately they turn and start walking into the swamp, which had fairly deep water.
What do you guys think? I mean, it could be aliens. It could be, I don't know. It's something in these woods that we may not know about. It can't be Bigfoot because there was no print. It can't be a werewolf because, again, there were no prints.
And they get to this clearing and they see there's this rocky overhang with high ground.
But I know one thing. I would never let that grandma watch my kids again. Shit.
Hear this whimpering again, and it's coming from underneath that rock. And they rush over and they're pulling the grass aside. And sure enough, tucked underneath this rock, inside of this kind of makeshift cave, is Eldridge. He was laying on this really well-constructed bed of leaves that looked like an animal's den. So either Eldridge had found an animal's den, or he...
No, that's not possible.
This beautiful bed of leaves.
He can't.
When they approached him, he was sleeping underneath this rock. And so that whimpering sound he was making, he must have been making in his sleep. And so as they got closer to him, he woke up and he kind of sat up and he's very groggy and confused. You know, all of his clothes were really badly torn up.
Yeah, they knocked him out.
Shoes, but he overall seemed okay. He just was very confused seeming. And so they scooped him up and they brought him back to search headquarters, reunited him with his mother and his grandmother, and everyone's just so relieved that he's alive. But
Chupacabra put up on him like, creek play. Bing, 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 bing. Bruh, whoever it is, they beat this little kid up, bruh. They should be ashamed of themselves. Supernatural forces doing people like that's crazy, bruh. Where's Mythbusters when you need them? Or Fact or Fake, bruh? I need to get them out there, make them go to work, because this is outrageous, beating up on little kids like this. Aliens, if it was you, you should be ashamed of yourself. I wish you come do that to me. No, I'm just playing. No, I'm like, no, don't do that. No, I'm just kidding.
At the same time, people were like, how did he get 4 miles away in the middle of the
Facts.
swamp? And so after the doctor cleared him, saying he was okay, besides some scratches and bruises, the police, along with the mother and the grandmother, sat down with Eldridge and asked him, you know, what happened? But unfortunately, Eldridge appeared to not know this had even happened.
Alien.
He didn't know he had spent 24 hours out in the middle of the woods by himself.
Yep.
It was like he had blacked the whole thing out.
They used the Men in Black
Eldridge
thing.
was found alive and unharmed, the police did not continue to investigate this case. And so we don't know what caused him to suddenly be yelling for help and appear to be drifting farther and farther into the woods. We don't know what the dog saw in the creek that scared it so badly.
Where's the other dog?
Eldridge moved 4 miles through a dense forest over multiple swamps, only to wind up in yet another swamp inside of a cave. Although the police came out and said Eldridge must have just wandered off on his own, basically everybody involved in this case believes someone or something abducted him. It's just very fortunate he was found alive. Unfortunately, there's no clarification about what happened to the other two dogs, although the way it's worded in the story, it does sound like they were never found.
Bro, why do you gotta do the animals like that, bro? And you notice they always take out the animals, bro, because the animals know. The other one was scared because he knew what happened to the other two dogs. If he knew if he went in there, the same thing was going to happen to him. Watching and waiting. Uh-oh. This is no good. No bueno.
In the 1950s, the Thorp family lived in Dunbar, Pennsylvania, which was a small town of less than 1,000 people. Their house was on a very quiet street with very few neighbors anywhere near them, and their property was right up against this forest that was right in their backyard. Their daughter, 2-year-old Anna, loved to play in their backyard, but she was instructed to stay on the grass section of their backyard and not venture into the forest because...
Once again, you cannot tell 2 to 5-year-olds not to go somewhere because they're going to get curious and go somewhere. Just keep an eye on them. Go out there and play with them if you have to. Do not let them go out there and be like, hey, don't do this, because they're going to do it.
The forest was snake infested.
I love snakes.
And Anna was terrified of snakes, and so she happily obliged. On May 5th, 1950, Anna was playing in her backyard in that grassy section, and her mother was in the kitchen looking out the back window into the backyard.
That's too far.
Her mother looked down for a second when she heard her daughter scream. she looked up and Anna was gone. She immediately ran outside and she's yelling for her daughter. She's looking all around and she knows she must have gone into the forest, and she's thinking to herself, she must have been bit by a snake and she's laying on the ground somewhere. That's why I can't see her. And so she runs into the forest and she's screaming for her daughter and she's not getting any response. She's starting to panic. All her yelling has gotten the attention of her 2 older sons that were in the house. They come running outside.
There we go.
Search, and they start fanning out, and they're looking for Anna, and she's just gone. And so after
the first red flag is ain't no 2-year-old covering that much ground. And if she got bit by a snake being that small, and if that was the size of the snakes that was in that forest, she's not going to have a chance to scream because they're going to wrap her up and constrict her, which would be the worst part. Like, if anything, if you got bit by the snake, the first place you would run would be back to your mom, right? Because that's like your safe haven. That's your safe space. You wouldn't run further into the forest. If you got bit, you would run back to the house. I kind of like, I get it. At the time, you're probably scared and not really thinking, but come on now. Even then, like, if somebody were to come through and would have snatched this little girl up and run, she would have never made it outside in time. Because one, she's in the kitchen, which means she would have to run out the kitchen, run out the door, and try to run into the yard before all time she do all that, they're gonna be out the front gate. Like, that's too far away, man. You could have washed the dishes or did that stuff later on. It could also depend on the community. Maybe not, the community is not like that or something, but 2 older sons tasked them out to go watch her or something, you know?
Only a few minutes of looking, Anna's mother decides she has to call the police. The police show up and they launch this massive search, and word got out to the residents of Dunbar that one of their own had gone missing, a child no less.
Polizei.
So virtually everyone in Dunbar showed
Polizei.
up to be a part of the search, and they combed that whole forest behind their property, and there was just no sign of Anna. They decided to expand the search area from a 1-mile radius to a 3-mile radius. And within just hours of this change, there was a crew that was 3 miles away from where Anna had gone missing, and they found Anna, and she was alive. She was laying under this blackberry bush. All she had on was a single shoe. Next to her was a pile of clothes. When they went up to her, she seemed okay. They picked her up, and they brought her back to the search headquarters where they reunited her with her parents. A doctor looked at her, and the doctor said, you know, there's no signs that she was attacked. There's really no signs of any wear and tear on her at all.
Why was her clothes off?
She was outside for the past 24 hours. When Anna was asked about what happened to her, she wasn't able to give any sort of answer because
she's 2.
But the reason this case is included in today's video is not because, you know, she vanished mysteriously in the forest and that she was actually found 3 miles away versus 1, or, you know, that she was found with just a shoe on.
Yeah.
The reason it's included in today's video is because for her to have been found where she was found, the only way for her to have arrived at that spot was if she crossed 10 barbed wire fences. There was no other way for her to have gotten there.
Well, unless you're an athlete.
The way would have been a massive detour that she literally could not have covered. An adult probably couldn't have covered in the amount of time given. So
I don't know. Have you met DJ Metcalf? I don't know, bro. That's some other type of beat. Could be DJ Metcalf's daughter.
This 2-year-old with no scratches on her body is found on the other side of 10 barbed wire.
Put her in the Olympics.
I mean, even if you take the barbed wire off of the fence, a 2-year-old climbing a large fence,
no scratches,
that alone is kind of a Herculean task.
Yeah.
And to do it without scratching your body,
facts.
It's not possible. It's
unless you're me.
Impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
A May 7th article in the LA Times said the police were baffled by this 10-fence dilemma, and they said the only way it would make sense is if she had been abducted,
aliens,
and dumped there. But the police also repeatedly said there was no evidence to suggest she had been abducted or attacked or harmed in any way. It was just where she was found did not add up. Police came out with a statement saying this had to have been an accident, that Anna, the 2-year-old, managed to just somehow walk her way past all these fences and was found where she was, and thank goodness she's alive. But interestingly, the police confiscated her clothing and would not give that back to the parents, indicating there was further investigation happening even though the child had been found. But unfortunately,
you know what that means? It was something that was not natural. It was something not normal. That's why they didn't give it back. Why wouldn't you give it back their clothes? You want to know why? Because they found something. And it was something that they probably didn't want the world to know, or they didn't want people to see. They probably found some kind of chip or plasma or some type of unworldly thing that would probably scare the public, and they kept it. And they're probably it's probably Area 51 or somewhere like that. Who knows? They're not going to go out and be like, oh yes, at this time we would like to announce that this girl was taken by an unknown force, which is known as alien. Like, they're not going to come on the air and say that, but they found something, and they're not going to tell us what. And if you notice, how you notice every time the people go missing, if they're like 2 to like 5 years old, they are returned, no scratches, no nothing. because they're not going to remember what happened. They're not going to be able to tell you what happened, like, intelligently, because they're small, and they're not going to be able to, like, tell you what happened without making it sound, you know, weird. But every time it's like a 15, 18-year-old, they always end up dead, or they end up somewhere, or they just don't come back at all.
Whether or not they actually discovered anything else about this case. And like in the Eldridge case, Anna's parents did not press for more information about what happened to their daughter because she was found alive and unharmed.
But the
now,
clothes
Anna's case might seem like some crazy anomaly, and that's all it is. But this is not the first time something like this has happened in this small area in Pennsylvania. 2 years earlier, and less than 10 miles away from where Anna went missing, another 2-year-old, Ronald Collier, also went missing in the same stretch of woods. His mother had been sitting with him on their back porch, which overlooked the same forest, and at some point his mother had gone inside, leaving Ronald sitting on one of the seats. When she came back out again, Ronald was gone.
You don't
His
say.
mother estimated that she was inside for maybe 10 or 15 seconds.
That's all it takes.
The police and the community came out in force, and they combed through the woods, and they could not find any sign of Ronald. And the police got really frustrated with Ronald's parents because they felt like this is impossible. How could this child not turn up, considering the timeline you've given us, which is you went inside for 10, 15 seconds, and your son is now completely gone. He's completely vanished. Like, you must have something to do with this.
The parents
So
are
the
prime
police
suspect.
made Ronald's parents take polygraph tests, and his parents passed all of them. The search for Ronald continued for several weeks, but unfortunately, it was ultimately terminated, and they never found him.
Never
People in
mind.
the area
Take back my
believe
statement from earlier.
someone or something, maybe a bear or some other animal, was lurking in the tree line and watching Ronald. And as soon as his mother went in the house, they ran up and snatched the child and ran away.
That's
with him.
impossible.
However, the police came out and said there was no evidence to back up that this child had been kidnapped, that what's far more likely is Ronald just got up and walked away and disappeared. However, 2 years later, when Anna's case happened, these similarities between her case and Ronald's case were just too much for locals to overlook. And so people began saying, you know, it looks like Anna was abducted and placed where she was ultimately found inside of those woods. And so probably whoever or whatever took Anna is the same person or thing that took Ronald.
Maybe Ronald was a chosen one.
Enough to survive. Although this mystery predator theory is just that, a theory, it does seem more likely than Ronald in 15 seconds getting up and running off into
not possible,
never to be found again, and Anna scaling 10 barbed wire fences in a 24-hour period without a scratch on her body. Unfortunately, though, we'll probably never know the truth.
We will never know the truth, man. It's outrageous. It's crazy, dude. Like, wow. The crow. I hope I don't say nothing bad about crows.
2004,
It's crow's nest, boy.
Robert Springfield, along with his 2 teenage sons, left their home in Wyoming, bound for the Bighorn Mountains in Montana. They were planning to do some elk hunting on the Crow Reservation, which is the homeland of the Crow tribe, and Robert and his family were members of the Crow Reservation, and therefore had the rights to
That's
hunt.
dope. I have to look at this up.
The specific spot the boys were going to be hunting was Black Canyon, a particularly steep and rugged area. But
Black Canyon? Why the canyon gotta be black? But does the canyon have any warrants? No, no, it's a joke from the last video, insider joke. So if you haven't seen the last video, make sure you go stop by and go check that out.
He was well equipped for this type of environment because he had previously served in the United States Marine Corps in their Special Operations Unit, which would have meant he would have received a very high level of outdoor survival training, which is perfect for living up in the mountains. Robert's sons had apparently learned a lot from him and were very competent outdoorsmen as well. They arrived at the reserve on September 19th and immediately headed out to do some bow and arrow hunting.
One day after my birthday.
Their plan was the 2 boys would break off from their father and head over to the edge of the canyon and attempt to drive elk down into the valley so their dad could take a shot at them. But late in the afternoon, the 2 teenage boys had not seen a single elk, and so it was getting to be time to head back to the
red flag
meeting spot. And so they packed up their stuff and they headed there. The boys make it to the meeting area and their father, Robert, is not there. So they sit down and they begin to wait. And an hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, 3 hours goes by, still no sign of their dad. They can't get in touch with him. They have no cell phone service. And so they're thinking to themselves, okay, you know, worst case scenario, he got turned around and he'll have to spend the night out in the cold. But he's got warm winter clothes on. He knows what he's doing. He'll be fine. And so as the sun was setting, the boys did finally leave to go tell authorities that their dad was lost in Black Canyon somewhere.
Like, I couldn't survive on my own and out in the wilderness, unfortunately. Maybe for like a week or maybe 2 if I'm lucky, but anything more than that, I think that 2 weeks is pushing it. Maybe 1 week I could survive. After that, I'm pretty much dead. I don't know how to do anything. I used to know how to start a fire back then, but I don't know how to do that anymore either. I forgot.
But it was just not registering for them that this could be life-threatening, that something really bad could have happened to their dad. He was just this Superman figure to them, and it just did not cross their mind. Authorities launch a search that night that includes the use of helicopters with thermal imagers doing low flyovers of the entirety of Black Canyon. Thermal imagers pick up a heat signature, and so anyone that is alive gives off a heat signature. And so at night, if you were flying overhead and you saw a person in the middle of a canyon where there's virtually nothing else around them, they would stand out like a bright light. But that night, the helicopters combed all over Black Canyon, and they never saw Robert. However, authorities would say that
aliens are savages, bro.
Former special operator, he probably went and found shelter. So he could be inside of a cave, or maybe he made himself a shelter with tree branches, and it's obscuring him from the thermal imager, and so we'll just have to look tomorrow. But the next day, despite bringing out hundreds of searchers and bloodhounds,
still
and
nothing,
horseback and more helicopters and planes flying overhead, there was no sign of Robert. And after several weeks of...
Okay, now this one could be a Bigfoot. He's in a canyon somewhere, so you don't know. But it also could be aliens. I feel like aliens is the #1 corporate, but let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. I think it's aliens, or possibly Bigfoot this time.
Still not finding any sign of Robert, they ultimately called it off. The family was obviously crushed, but more than that, they were just dumbfounded. The idea that something bad had happened to Invincible Robert, that just didn't add up for them. And so after the official search was terminated, they would continue to make trips into Black Canyon looking for their father, their husband.
That's what I'm talking about.
But unfortunately, like all the searchers, they never found any trace of him and eventually accepted that he was gone.
Please
let us. In October of 2005,
wait a minute.
A hunter who didn't know anything about Robert Springfield or the fact that he had disappeared. This hunter is in Black Canyon in the same area where Robert Springfield had disappeared. And this hunter is walking through this really dense forest. He's all alone. He's an experienced hunter. And
please don't let him be dead.
Combing through the woods, and he starts to hear what sounds like a crow screeching. And at first, it doesn't really register with him. It's only in retrospect that he recalls this sequence of events. As he kept walking on, the screeching intensified to the point where he just could not ignore it. And so he stopped and turned to listen to this screeching crow that he couldn't see through the dense forest, but he could tell it was in that general direction. This hunter said as soon as he stopped and he turned and began actively listening to this crow, he had this weird sensation that the crow was trying to actively communicate with him. It was a very strange experience. He had never had anything like it in his entire hunting career, and he spent lots of time outdoors. And so he felt like he had to go over and see what was going on with this crow. He starts walking towards the crow. He still can't see it. It's very thick vegetation, and he's getting closer and closer, and he gets to a place where he can just barely see this crow. It's in a clearing.
That's crazy, dude.
Large tree stump right in the middle of the clearing, and this tree stump is not short. It's like 6, 7, 8 feet high in the air. It looks like this tree had broken in the middle and fallen over, and this crow is sitting on the top of this kind of gnarled stump. And the crow is just incessantly screeching. And from this hunter's perspective, he can see the crow and he's kind of staring at it. And as the hunter is looking at this crow, the crow suddenly turns and looks directly at the hunter. And it recognizes the hunter can see the crow. And the crow stops screeching and is just staring directly at the hunter.
Nope. Yeah, bruh. Nah, man. I don't know if the crow's tribe or whatever it is cursed, or maybe the crows are helping. We about to find out right now. But my guess is that it's a cursed path. You go down there for any unjust reasons like hunting or killing the wildlife or something, and some curse falls upon you and you just go missing. That's what I think, but I could be overthinking it because I've seen so many movies.
I felt so unsettled by the sudden behavior of the crow, because it was almost like confirming the crow was looking for him, and now he had found him, and he stopped screeching and was looking at him. The bird continued to stare silently at the hunter, to the point where the hunter felt compelled to walk out of the vegetation into the clearing to kind of confront the crow. And so he stepped into the clearing, and the crow the whole time is not screeching anymore, just looking at the hunter, and the hunter's standing in the clearing, and he looks at the crow, and the crow suddenly looks straight down. The hunter follows the crow's gaze down to the ground, and he sees at the base of the tree is a human skull. And the hunter's so taken aback by this, he looks back up at the crow, who's looking at him again, And the whole situation is so terrifying to this hunter that he just makes a note of where he is and he runs. As soon as the hunter got out of the woods and was back in cell phone reception, he called.
So, plot twist. Is the bird the missing Marine from the beginning? And he tried to tell him where his body was? Or is that the tribe sending a message to the hunter to get out of there and that's going to be him next? What do you guys think down in the comment section? Only because it's a bird. Like, you know, maybe a dog or a wolf or something like that. But a crow, bruh? Like, that's kind of rare for a crow to call you and you understand that it's calling you over there and you find the body of this missing dude. That's crazy, man.
Authorities showed up and showed them the map where he had discovered this crow and the skull next to a tree. And sure enough, the authorities make their way out and they find the skull right under this tree. The crow at this point is gone. When they walked up to the tree stump, they discovered it was not just a human skull, it was also a human femur bone right next to the skull.
That's the leg, right?
That was a set of boots that had been placed right next to them, neatly next to one another. And then next to that was a belt that had been tightly wound up and placed next to the boots. And then next to that was a jacket that was not folded, but was balled up. And inside of the jacket was a wallet containing cash and Robert Springfield's ID cards. The authorities launched a search
What killed him?
To look for the rest of Robert's remains, but unfortunately they were never recovered. Also, his bow and arrows were never found. The FBI was brought into the case because foul play was suspected, and they eventually determined that Robert must have been shot. And then they later recanted that statement and said, actually, he was hit by a falling tree. But if he was struck by a tree, then
bones.
Where is the rest of him?
Yeah.
Would he have been in that area? And then why were all of his things neatly
Exactly. Like the tree fell on him, and then when it fell on him, the tree branches all came down and folded his clothes and then put his belt to the side and stacked his boots. Like, come on, bro. The FBI... Do you think we stupid, man? He can't be shot. There was no holes or anything, so what made you believe he was shot? If he was shot, the rest of his torso should have been there, unless the animals came. So there's no identifiable marks on his body for them to assume that he was shot. First of all, if the tree fell on him, his femur bone would have been cracked at least. Ain't no tree falling on you, you're not breaking any bones. I feel like he went to do something and he wasn't supposed to do it, or maybe he was about to shoot something that was actually a spirit animal of some person and he got clapped. But that's unfortunate, man. He sounded like he was a great dude. Prayers to his family and stuff, but the way that they're explaining his death is just like they won't accept the fact that it's paranormal.
Done that after getting hit by a tree, so who neatly stacked his things after he was hit? And then also, where is his bow and arrows? But despite how improbable it sounds, that is the official theory, that he was hit by a falling tree.
He was hit by... If he was hit by a falling tree... Now, mind you, when a tree is falling, you can hear it. It just doesn't fall silently. You hear a couple of snap, crackles, and pops like Rice Krispies before it snaps off and falls. So if this man is a Marine, I'm pretty sure, a Special Forces Marine at that, I'm pretty sure he'll be able to notice when a tree is about to fall or getting ready to fall or decaying. Like, come on, man. This is not no just regular amateur just walking through the woods. This is a experienced individual that we're talking about. So, like, these reports, man, they be killing me, Smalls.
Other people believe he was attacked by someone or something up in those mountains.
It's possible.
But if he had been attacked, his sons would have heard the struggle because
exactly.
They were in an area where sound carried really, really well.
Yeah, I don't know.
If the person attacked him, why didn't they take the money out of his wallet? Also, where Robert's remains had been found was very close to where his original campsite had been with his two sons.
But they scanned it.
Missing. And so it was firmly located inside of the initial grid, meaning had he been under a tree or been left for dead by some attacker in that area,
they would have seen it.
He would have been found in those first couple of weeks.
I told you, man. I'm telling you, me and Mrballen are conjoined twins. You guys have to let him know I'm his twin that he does not know about. We think the same, man, because this just doesn't make any sense. And if you guys in the comment section thought the same as we did, man, welcome to the party. Welcome to the family, because this makes no sense. Oh, I gotta calm down.
So the fact that he wasn't found means either hundreds of people didn't see him, including a helicopter with thermal imager, or he wasn't there until after the search was terminated.
And if you were struck by a fallen tree, I'm pretty sure that was in a fallen tree as well. So no.
And if so, where was he? And perhaps the weirdest aspect of this entire case is the claim by this hunter that a crow apparently lured him over to this tree stump where he found Robert's remains.
I think that bird was Robert.
If this hunter's story, and many, many people do, then do you really think it's a coincidence that all of this took place on Crow Reservation, home of the Crow tribe?
Yo, that's dope.
Will we ever know the truth about what actually happened to Robert? I don't know. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found
Yo, that was a
secret
good
to this
video, dude.
episode,
Good job.
let us know in the comments what it is and where you found it. So give us the timestamp. And if you're the first to do that, we will pin you at the top of the comments section. If you enjoyed today's video and you haven't done this already, please give the like button VIP access to the King to Ka roller coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure, New Jersey. And once they get to the top, manually turn off the ride and close the park. Also, please subscribe to our channel
Facts.
and turn on all
Subscribe,
notifications
man.
so you don't
Let's
miss
go.
any of our weekly 3, 4, even 5 video uploads.
Every
If you want
week.
to get in touch with me, you can direct message me on Instagram or on Twitter.
Hero will
My username
respond.
on platforms is the same. It's JohnBallen416. I also have a ton of content over on TikTok where my username is Mrballen. If you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called Mrballen. It's linked in the description below. So whether I see you on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok,
Or Reddit,
YouTube, or some combination, just know that I really appreciate your support. Until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.
So yeah, man, that's also, man. Make sure you hit the subscribe button for me too as well. Make sure you guys swoop down to the description box and go follow Mrballen and go check out the rest of his content. This man is a beast. Keep showing support to this channel, man. We're right around the corner from 1,000. Like I said, next week I will be giving some hints of maybe a giveaway or some sort. We don't know. Christmas time around the corner. Feeling good. You guys are supporting me. Feel like I'll give back to you guys. Greatly appreciate it. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Let me know down in the comment section, man. You have any recommendations, please let me know.